Hey there! So we're getting into more advanced selection stuff in our Photoshop or PhotoP class, and hopefully you are pretty comfortable now with using your selection tools. So we've gone over the marquee tools, the rectangular and elliptical ones. Um, Remember those just select in a specific shape. So if you're just wanting to get a square or a circle shape, you just click and drag and that's going to select in that shape. When you have a selection, remember you get the marching ants, that little border that appears. Whenever you have a selection tool at the top, there's going to be a series of buttons, and they look a little different whether you're in Photoshop or PhotoP, but they're the same buttons. You have the Start a New Selection, which is Replace. You have Add to Selection, which is Unite, and you have Subtract, which takes it out of your current selection. If you want to select in a perfect square or circle, you would hold Shift while drawing. So like there, I just, well, actually, there we go. I'm drawing and holding Shift, and I'm adding to selection here, but you can see, there we go, how it adds it all in there. Or if I stick it on Subtract, then it's going to take it out. So you've got all those different options. Whenever you want to get rid of the marching ants, you press Control D, which stands for deselect. So we talked about the marquee tools. We also talked about the lassos, the various lassos, plain old freehand lasso, which you just draw and it puts it in there. Pretty simple. We talked about the polygonal or the polygon lasso, which you click, let go, click, let go, click, let go, and then eventually get it back to seal that up to create a selection. We also talked about the magnetic lasso, which is going to put down points for you. So as you click and drag your mouse, it automatically adds in points. And you can see that if it's not trying to give me a point, I click and force a point in there, and you just work your way around whatever it is that you're trying to select. And then again, you get back to the beginning and then seal it off. If you're drawing with a polygonal lasso or the magnetic lasso, you can also press backspace at any point. If it's starting to go off crazy, just press backspace multiple times and move your mouse back. So we talked about those. Then we talked about the quick selection and magic wand tools. The magic wand, of course, is for selecting um, basically solid color areas. And it's a one-click method. You just click that. Set your tolerance to whatever you need it to be. Remember, a low number is super picky. High number is going to be more tolerant. It's going to select multiple colors or multiple shades. So we talked about those. Then we kind of got into things that were a little different between PhotoP and Photoshop. I'm going to pop over to Photoshop here and zoom up so that you can see stuff better. Um, so then we've got our quick selection. So now I'm in Photoshop. The quick selection is a brush, so you use your brackets to make it bigger or smaller, and then again you just click and drag over things to select. You just keep on doing it repeatedly. Every time you let go of your mouse, you're creating a history state. That means that's an undo point. So if I pull up my window history here, you can see every time I've let go, it puts down a quick selection. So I can undo individually times like this, or I could go all the way back to when I opened it and there was nothing selected. Now, once you start doing that again, it's kind of like Back to the Future. You're on a new timeline. So once I start this again, see, all of those are gone. And now we've started a new timeline, if you will, of history. So you don't want to just click and drag forever, because if I do that, I'm not going to have undo spots to back up to. So be careful about that when you're using these. But the quick selection brush just allows us to brush over things to select it, and it bounces out beyond the parameters of where that brush is because it tries to guess. So it's kind of like the magnetic lasso, and it's kind of like the magic wand. It kind of jumps out there based on some sort of, I'm sure, algorithm or something that decides the difference on the edges. So we also have that tool in PhotoP. Um, Now, it doesn't work as good in PhotoP sometimes, and that's just because PhotoP struggles a little bit with big images. Now, this tree image that's in your folder that I'll ask that you open, this tree image is not a very big image. So, like, I just clicked one time and it selected, well, it selected all of the green. It even selected the ground down here. As you can see, I'll just add a layer mask so you can see better because, there you go. So there it is. It selected all of that. Pretty good, actually, on that one. So the tool works really well in PhotoP. It's just if your image is huge, one of those that you have to control minus a bunch because it's just so big, then PhotoP struggles with it a bit. But the quick selection tool is a great tool. It's one of those that a lot of people, like I said, are mad when they find out about it later on. Okay, and then we get into tools that are specific to PhotoP. So in PhotoP, we have an object selection tool. Now I'm going to go ahead and place another image. And again, I'm going to ask that you participate with me. And I'm in PhotoP now, so I'm going to ask you, even if you're in my Photoshop section and you're in the lab, let's do this one in PhotoP. So I'm going to grab the dog image, and we're going to place this dog in here. This dog has a lot of little hairs going on here, and that makes it a little harder to select with the quick selection brush. But we can use the object selection, and then we're just going to draw a box around the dog. Okay, so it didn't do very good. I'll try again. We'll see if it does any better. A little better, but it's still not great, right? So I'm going to Control D. And then the other tool we talked about that you can access when you're on Object Select or Quick Select is called Magic Cut. Again, this is only in PhotoP, but we right click and go to Magic Cut. And it tries to just determine where the picture is. So look over here. So here's our preview. I'm going to Control Plus so we can see it a little better. Here's our preview of this. Now, I didn't get into this in the previous video, so now we're going to get into the advanced part of Magic Cut. Again, if you're in Photoshop, we could transition at any time to have to use PhotoP, so you need to know both of these. So in here, when we have Magic Cut, we have a green and a red. The green is basically foreground, which means that's areas we want to keep. So if there's any questions about that, we just rub our mouse over areas that are missing that we need to keep. Now there's really not anything missing on here. We have some areas we don't need. See that? So I'm going to take this red and go over here kind of in this area where it had some trouble. See how that fixed that, that updated that? And I could even go up here just a little bit. I don't want to get too close or I might lose my doggy, right? Lose parts of the dog. So I went around a little bit. So these look weird over here. And they just do because we're kind of marking certain little areas. Like if you've ever removed the background on a picture in PowerPoint, you have to mark areas to keep and to delete. This is kind of like that. Okay, now you can over here preview it on a different color background so you can see what it's going to look like. So like if I look at this on black, look at that. That's a pretty good selection, don't you think? And you can look at it on white too. If you know you're moving it to a light background, you want to make sure it looks really good on white, right? And this still has some issues here with fringing. That's what gray is for in photo. So gray is what they call, well, it says erase. It's kind of an undefined color. So like right here where these little wisps are on this dog's head where I'm seeing too much of this over here, I'm going to just paint it in gray. Okay, so we're over here. Let me make sure I get a hold of it. Okay, I wasn't clicked on it. There we go. Paint in gray. It will let me. Like I said, some of these things are just, you know, they're a little picky. Well, it's not letting me go here. Okay, well, we'll try this again. I'll go back up in here with my green, and then we'll go back over on the other direction and get just a little bit closer with the, there we go. Okay, that got it. Don't you love watching me mess up? And I could totally pause and rewind right now, but I'm not because I just don't feel like it. Okay, so that's a little bit better. Well, anyway, that gray is supposed to help you fix those little edges. Now, that works better in this in the other refine edge tool, not in Magic Cut so much. So I'm going to leave that. But anyway, when you're done, you're going to put it out to, well, one of two things. You can either put it out on a selection if you want, or you can go ahead and put it out on a layer mask. So if you put it out on a mask, you're automatically going to have like, you know, it's already going to have the black and white mask box, right? I'm actually going to just put selection only because I want to look at this differently. So I'm going to say selection and okay. That means it's just going to be in marching in. So now I'm in here and I'm just kind of looking at it, just making sure there's nothing missing here in the middle. All right, I think it looks good. So now I'm going to go ahead and click on add the mask. Now remember, you could pop into quick mess mode for a minute where it makes it pink. And then you can kind of look one more time, be like, yeah, it looks pretty good. I like it. All right, now add your layer mask over here on the right side. All right, there we go. And that looks pretty good. And of course, I mean, this dog was in the grass down here, so it looks a little bit goofy at the bottom, but it's not too bad. All right, so I'm going to show you one more thing that we haven't talked about yet that I think you're going to really like. And you don't really need it for this dog picture, but you might for other things. And that is holding down the Alt key and clicking on your layer mask. Look at that. Now we can actually see that black and white. So you know how we're always painting in black and white on the mask? Well, if you hold down Alt and click the mask, you can actually see that mask. And actually, I can tell there's some see-through areas on here inside this dog's head area. So I'm going to take my white paintbrush, and I might make it a little bit softer. Not too much, because sometimes then it starts to blend outside the edges of the dog. Okay, and I'm just going to take white. So let me hit D to make sure they're black and white, and then make sure white's on top. And I'm just going to go over here and paint this in, because probably there was part of that dog that wasn't actually in this selection. And you could do that for any of these other areas, but we could say maybe there's a little light coming behind his head, and so there would be some see-through gray areas in there. Okay, and then when you're happy with it, you just alt click again, and then it's back to normal. So it's just a real nice way anytime you have a layer mask, to be able to look at that layer mask right away. Okay, so I'm going to press Control Alt T because I'm in PhotoP, and we can't press Control T or it makes a new tab. And then I'm going to hold Shift and pull from the corner, and we'll put our puppy dog down in here in the grass. And then that bottom part, he looks like the most massive dog ever, but it's okay. So then that bottom part there kind of looks like the grass that he's in is maybe up in his fur, even though it's not really. But there you go. So that worked out pretty well. So Magic Cut is a PhotoP only thing, okay? Now let's go to Photoshop and take a look at it in here. I'm going to zoom out and Control D and go ahead and place this image as well. So I'm going to place my puppy dog, pop him in there, and I'm going to zoom up, of course, so I can see what's happening. All right, I'm going to hit my check mark, and now we're ready to go after this one. So in Photoshop, we have the Select Subject button, which is kind of like the Object Selection button in PhotoP. So I'm going to click Select Subject. Again, you have to be on your Quick Selection brush to get to this. So make sure you have that noted somewhere. I'm going to click Select Subject. It's going to look at this. It's going to try to find him. Taking a little bit of time. We have to be patient, so don't go crazy clicking around like, a crazy person. All right, there we go. Now it says it's done. Now, what we're going to do, so whereas that Magic Cut took us into a window where we could work on it, this is going to let us go into a window where we can work on it too. We have to click the second button up here. So where it says Select and Mask, I'm going to click on that. All right, so there it is. We've talked about Select Mask before, but I haven't gotten into real in-depth detail on it. It's one of those things that you're just going to have to play around with a little bit. You can change lots of things in here. For instance, I could smooth out my puppy dog. I don't recommend it, or you're going to start losing his little wisps of hair. See that? Not just like smooth it out so much that he doesn't have wisps of hair anymore. You can do contrast, which makes the wisps of hair like more noticeable. Almost makes it too pixely on this one. So these I don't mess with a whole lot really. This edge detection, if the edge has a little bit of fringing, you could sometimes just increase that radius a little bit. Like if there was a little bit of white around the edge of something when you selected it, it would get rid of that, for instance. You could do a little bit of edge detection. And then up at the top where it says view mode, this is where you can look at it on different colors to make sure it looks good. So like here's that mask, like I can look at the mask. Here it is on white, but I need to turn it up. And here it is on black. It looks pretty good on black. And just like the other one, on white, it's not perfect. It's not the greatest. So on that other program where we could go in and mark, on Magic Cut, we could mark the green and the reds. On this one, we have this little brush over here called the Refine Edge brush. I call it the hair brush sometimes because it looks like it's got a little piece of hair next to it. You can zoom up and take that little brush and brush around some of these edges. So I'm just clicking one time in some of these areas where it's noticeable. Now, sometimes it messes up and doesn't look very good, so you kind of have to keep checking it. Okay, that does actually look significantly better, I think. And I do still have a little bit of areas maybe that could be a little bit better, but this isn't really helping much on those. Now, if for some reason you change something and like it looks worse, like see that, how it's like all messed up there, just put this on minus and just get rid of what you did down there. It's kind of like an undo almost, the minus is when you're on that little hairbrush. Again, it's the Refine Edge brush is what that's called. Okay, so now that we're good, I like it. We can put it out to selection, just like on the other one, we had the box in the corner. We can put it out to selection, which is putting it out to mark ants, or I can put it on a layer mask. Either way, okay? I'll do like I did on the other and put it out to selection. So there it is, it's all selected. And then again, I could go back into my quick mask mode. I can't get to the button on here on the screen, so I'm just gonna press Q. There we go. So there it is. Looks good on quick mask. So I'm press Q again to turn it off. And then I don't know why I have all these so big over here. And then I'm going to come over here to my layers panel and hit that layer mask button and we'll pop it right on there. Okay, once again, move tool, Control T in Photoshop. And then we've got him. I'm zoomed up really close, so he looks pretty blurry, but that's because I'm at 500%. Now, just like I said before, we can hold down Alt and click the layer mask, and we can pop right to the layer mask again. Now, we don't have any areas we need to paint in on this one, but just remember, you can do that regardless of the program. This Alt and click will let you get back on a mask, right? And then you can see if you're missing something, and it's just a little bit easier sometimes than painting in black and white if you just know like it's a little bitty part somewhere or you can't quite tell where something's missing. So it's a pretty powerful little tool. So Alt and click, and that lets you view that mask. And then you can Alt click again and get rid of that view. All right, so I've got my puppy dog on here. I think that's probably enough to cover on this one. I am going to go back to PhotoP for a moment. So here we are back in PhotoP. I'm going to hold down my space bar here and pull this guy up. All right, so let's go ahead and let me pull in here again. We have another set of puppies. It's two puppies. Doggies, as they're called on here. Let me zoom out just a tad. All right, so I got these. So let's say I just want the little puppy. Okay, I'm going to try the object selection one. And I want to get the plus sign just on the little puppy. All right, see, look, that went pretty good. There's some that it didn't get here. I'm going to try again. I'm just trying not to get part of that mama up there. See it got mad. I'm going to Control D and try again. It's just that one part I can't get down there because it gets really confused. You want the plus sign to be completely in your subject. Okay, there we go. That's a little bit better. Now this time I'm going to go into that refine edge again. So I didn't go into Magic Cut this time. I just went straight into Refine Edge. And this is the tool that, we don't have Select and Mask in here like we do in Photoshop. We have Refine Edge, and it doesn't work as good, but we can mess with it. So over here, there's a thing called Border, and you can decrease that border size, which is going to change how that looks over there. And then, like I said, we have white, which you would paint in if there's parts of it that weren't coming in all the way. You could paint in white to make sure they're getting in there. And I can keep going out a little further here. You can paint in black again to make sure there's areas that are outside here that don't belong. Like there actually is an area where my head is. There actually is an area down here. I'm going to use a smaller brush that's got, see that right there? I need to get rid of that. So if I can get my brush to change, it's not wanting to change. Yeah. So I'm going down here and trying to get rid of some of that. But notice it's also kind of messing with some of the rest of it too. So I have to be really careful here. And then that gray button up there, I really thought I moved this border down. Oh, I didn't. Okay. And then the gray button, now I have a 4. The gray button is where you can go around the edges. So to make sure, and I'm going to put this on black so we can see it. So make sure we're getting those little puffy edges on there. You can take the gray and go right around the edges of your little animal here to try to bring in some of that. Now this one really, honestly, was already in kind of good shape. Some of the tutorials I've watched actually will use a bigger border on here, but I've had trouble with that border working out. So we'll just see how this goes. Okay, so like there's an area up here I don't need, so I'm gonna take black, make sure I don't, that's from the mama's fur, I think. We can get that black going here. It's funny because it doesn't think that part's in there. Notice how I'm trying to paint over there and it won't let me. It just won't. So like I said, it's a little bit of a pickier program. What you're seeing is basically it's like a halo around your object here. Okay, so once we do that, again, we can put it out to a mask or a selection. So let's say this time I'll go straight to the mask. I'm nervous because sometimes I lose my animals when I do this. Let's hit OK. Okay, that worked out all right. Okay. So, but you do have to make sure, and notice it's like showing the whole big thing because it did have 2 animals there. I'm going to Control Alt T and then pull from the corner with Shift. And then we got this little guy in here. And this one needs some work. As we saw just a minute ago, I'm going to hit Enter here. This one definitely has some spots we're going to have to fix. Easy peasy, right? We're going to hold down Alt and click here. And we can very much see here the issues. See them? The issues out here? So now I'm going to take that black paintbrush, put it on top, and we're going to paint out some of this fringing that's going on down here. And be careful, you don't want to get rid of the little wisps of hair because that's kind of the point, right? Is to have that all going in there. Don't use a real fuzzy brush. You can use just a little bit, back off on the hardness a little bit, but don't use like a soft brush or you're going to end up with a little weird glow around your doggy. Okay, I'm going to hit Alt click, and there we go. Again, we're zoomed up like super, super close. So all right, so hopefully in this lesson you've learned how to use the powerful tools that we have provided to us in here. So remember again, in PhotoP we can start with object selection, or we can right click and go to Magic Cut, and then we've got the refine edge. Now I'm going to click on it and it's not going to matter right now because nothing's selected, but refine edge, which allows us to refine those selections and preview them and then put them out to a mask or selection. Or if we're in Photoshop, what we've got is going to be the select and mask. So after you've selected subject, you can select a mask, and you can use select and mask in Photoshop on anything. So if I place the Care Bear again, I always come back to this Care Bear, don't I? I can select subject in here and it should select my Care Bear for the most part. Again, sometimes you gotta wait. I'm even in Photoshop right now and it's still taking a bit of time. And this is an easy picture. And then I can go into select and mask. And so in the select and mask mode, I can scroll all the way up, as we talked before about, and view it on black, view it on white, and I can see in here where this issue is. So I can paint that out with my paintbrush in a minus while I'm in this screen and fix that. I would zoom up and do it, but I'm just not going to zoom up right now. This is a really bad, oh, it's really bad. Just let's put it back. That's not good stuff here. Okay. Ah, that's okay. I'm gonna not worry about it. Okay, anyway, so once you get it like you want, come down here. Remember, you can output it to selection, which is marching ants, or we can put it all the way onto the layer mask. I'll go ahead this time and just shoot it straight out to a layer mask. And bam, we've got our little Care Bear all ready to go to join this party. Okay, so your task now is to mess around with, if you're in PhotoP, you want to use object selection and you want to try that magic cut, but you also want to use that refine edge and play with it. And even if you're in Photoshop class using actual Photoshop, I want you to go into PhotoP and use those tools because you need to be familiar with how they both work. And then those of you in the Photoshop section, make sure that you familiarize yourself with select subject and then using that select and mask. And remember, we've got lots of options here in select and mask, and we can get back into select and mask later on. You can change your view to black or white. And then down at the bottom, you have that option to output it to, and sometimes you can't see that, you may have to open the box, but output it to a layer mask or to that selection. Okay, so now it's time to play. Remember, you could do lots of different things with this. Like for instance, with your tree here, I'm going to duplicate my tree. So I'm just going to make a copy of this layer. So now I have two of them. And then I'm going to try using select subject on my tree. Let's see how it does selecting the tree. It's probably going to take forever because the tree's kind of complicated. And you can do this with Magic Cut over in PhotoP. I won't do it in both this time. Okay, so there we go. Let's see how this is looking. I'm going to turn off my other one and just pop the select and mask tool on this one. There we go. Just ignore the fact that you can see my bear. Let me hit cancel so you can see. It's just because the layer's on. I'm going to turn those layers off. Okay, select and mask. All right, so there you go. We've got those. Now, we have some issues here because of all these little white spots, right? And we could take and use that little hairbrush I mentioned and paint in here between some of these. See, that's going to get rid of some of it. It's not perfect and it's going to start getting a little bit blurry. And in the next session, I'm going to give you a better tool for that. But just so you can see, you can use that little edge brush, that refine edge brush, to try to fix some of those issues as well. And if you're in Photoshop, you can also try this radius button and mess with it a little bit and see if that helps matters at all. But anyway, and then when you're done, again, you can put it out to layer mask or to a selection. Now, of course, here we've got to worry about the fact that if we changed the background, now we've got little, blue spots showing here. So if I put a nighttime picture behind this, it's going to look a little weird. So for instance, you've got a picture in the folder that's a sunshine, and we're going to mess with this in the next lesson too. But I could take this sunset. Let me just make it bigger than the thing here. Remember, you can also take your navigator so you can see all of this stuff at once, and then reposition it. All right, so let's say that's where I want it to be, and I'll put it behind. And so see, that blue, that's mess. It's ugly. So we're going to talk about how do we deal with the uglies in here in that next session. So again, play around a little bit in Photoshop with select subject and select a mask and dealing with holding Alt and clicking and messing with your masks that way. And then in PhotoP, work on magic cut and using that refine edge.